Although the color of hōjicha leaves in hōjicha tea may make it look like a type of black tea, hōjicha is actually a roasted green tea. After the leaves are harvested, they are steamed to stop the oxidation process. If the leaves were not heated after harvest, they would fully oxidize and become a black tea. This makes hōjicha a type of Japanese green tea, but what makes it unique is what happens next. The hōjicha leaves are roasted in either a large pan or in a roasting machine. While it is common for Japanese green teas to be heated at many different stages in the production, this is usually done at very low temperatures and used primarily for drying. With hōjicha, the heat applied is far more intense, and it's done for a longer time. This completely transforms the tea leaf and turns the color from green to brown. What's even more remarkable is what happens to the flavor. The hōjicha tea is now almost unrecognizable from its original unroasted state. The flavor is not necessarily better or worse, it just becomes different. It trades these fresher notes of steamed vegetables and citrus for warmer notes of coffee, caramel, and chocolate. The color of the hōjicha tea becomes red to brown, further demonstrating the massive transformation this tea undergoes. Japanese hōjicha is a relatively modern invention, dating back to the early 20th century. As with many other teas like genmaicha and kukicha, hōjicha began as a way to get the most out of the tea harvest. At this point in time, tea was still a precious commodity, and the demand often exceeded the supply. A few innovative tea producers in Kyoto began to roast the parts of the tea plant they wouldn't otherwise sell. This became a huge hit, and people all around Japan began to appreciate these more roasted flavors in their green tea. Eventually, producers began experimenting with different ways to make hōjicha. Not all hōjicha green tea is the same. Depending on which parts of the tea plant are roasted and how strong the roast is, you can get completely different flavor profiles. Hōjicha is normally made out of either sencha, bancha, or kukicha. While it is far less common, we have also encountered hoji genmaicha and even roasted gyokuro tea. Different parts of the tea plant not only taste different, but they also roast different. Smaller and more delicate leaves roast quicker than the thicker, mature leaves you may find in a bancha. Hōjicha can also be separated into light roast, medium roast, and dark roast. Depending on how dark you like the flavor, you have many different options in the world of hōjicha tea, similar to the world of coffee. Kyobancha is a specialty of the area of Kyoto, and it's made from roasted bancha leaves. These are the older leaves of the tea plant, so when they are roasted, they take on a different taste profile than the younger leaves. Kyobancha is turned by hand in a large pan, and the tea is roasted quite thoroughly. When trying a Kyobancha from Mr. Takada, you will notice right away how heavily roasted this tea is. It almost goes into a smoky direction, and the leaves of the tea look almost burnt. This may be a polarizing tea, but many tea connoisseurs really enjoy it. While this used to be a more common practice in Japan, there are now only 10 small locations around Kyoto that make Kyobancha in this traditional style. Kuki Hojicha is another delicious phenomenon. This tea is made from either the stems and leaves of the tea plant or simply just the stems. By using just the stems of the tea plant, you are not only lowering the caffeine content, but you're also able to get a darker roast. With this tea, you get more of the hay or straw notes coming from the tea, and in the case of the Kuki Hojicha from Mr. Isen, you get a much darker flavor profile, almost like coffee. If you're looking for the best Hojicha for coffee lovers, the Isen Kuki Hojicha is definitely the one. Mr. Isen uses a unique method to produce his Hojicha. While most Hojicha teas are roasted in a large machine to get a uniform roast, Mr. Isen uses a technique that is a bit more nuanced for producing smaller batches of his famous Kuki Hojicha. He actually roasts the tea leaves in a hot pan, and they are automatically turned by a system of metal paddles. This process may take more time and only allows smaller quantities to be produced, but it allows Mr. Isen to have more control over the roasting process and make sure the tea is roasted to perfection. He also uses the same machine to produce his Kamehirocha, or partially roasted tea. Kamehirocha is somewhere in between a hōjicha, or fully roasted tea, and a sencha, or unroasted tea. This pan-firing method is common with Chinese green teas, but not with Japanese green teas, making Kamehirocha an anomaly in Japan. Although Kamehirocha is uncommon in Japan as a whole, there are some areas where it has become a specialty, such as Miyazaki, where Mr. Isen lives. This Kamehirocha is roasted in the same pan as the Kuki Hojicha, but this time it is left uncovered so it doesn't get to as high of a temperature. It also is roasted for a shorter time, so instead of turning brown, the leaves only slightly change in color. This tea really strikes a sweet spot in between roasted tea and unroasted tea. It has characteristics of each, but also its own that are entirely unique. The Kamehirocha from Mr. Isen has these nutty flavor profiles like cashew, hazelnut, and toasted almond. It also maintains some of its steamed vegetable characteristics you might expect from a Japanese green tea like sencha. When it comes to the best hōjicha for beginners, we often point people towards the Noike hōjicha. This tea is produced by Mr. Noike, who owns a small tea farm in a forest just outside of Kyoto. Because of the natural shading provided by the large pine trees that surround his forest, a lot of his teas take on a sweeter taste profile than they normally would. This makes the Noike hōjicha a much sweeter hōjicha, with notes of caramel and chocolate. Kyoto is the origin of Japanese hōjicha, and it still produces some of the best roasted teas. This hōjicha from Mr. Noike is a proud representative of this great legacy. If you'd like to try to make your own hōjicha at home, there is a trick you can use that actually works quite well. Just take a few grams of tea leaves and place them in a dry pan to roast over your stove. It will take about 5 minutes before you notice any roasting take place, but once it starts, it will happen very quickly, so keep an eye on the leaves. Once you have reached the desired level of roast, you can turn off the heat and brew your hōjicha tea right away. Japanese hōjicha has undergone a lot of transformation over the years, but it is still well loved today. If you visit Kyoto in the fall, you can see people roasting tea leaves in small roasting machines. The aroma of these freshly roasted tea leaves wafts through the air and draws you into every tea shop. In the warmer months, people like to prepare hōjicha as a cold brew to extract more of these caramel flavors. At certain tea shops around Japan, they will actually roast the tea by hand right in front of you. This is done in a special type of pan where the tea leaves can be heated over a flame or a stove and then poured directly into a teapot. You also get the benefit of choosing which level of roast you want for the tea. Depending on how long the leaves are kept in a pan, they can produce a light, medium, or dark roasted hōjicha. This may require a lot of extra work, but it's all worth it for the taste of freshly roasted hōjicha. However you like to prepare hōjicha green tea, I'm sure you will be glad that you discovered it. If you are interested in trying some hōjicha for yourself, we would love it if you could try some of ours. We currently have 3 different types of hōjicha on our website produced by small farmers in Japan. By trying these teas, you help us to support these talented farmers so that they can continue to produce excellent quality green teas without pesticides or chemicals. If you like this video, it would really mean a lot to us if you could subscribe to our channel and stay tuned for future tea videos. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you next time.